If you have an AI interview coming up, especially for AI training or evaluator roles, you may get questions that are not only testing your final answer, they may also be testing how clearly you can explain your thinking.
Right. A lot of candidates focus too much on getting the perfect answer. But in these interviews, the way you reason through a question can be just as important as the answer itself.
Exactly. So today, let's talk about how to answer technical or skill-based AI interview questions in a way that sounds clear, organized, and natural.
Yeah, and to really get a handle on this, I think we probably have to start by looking at what the landscape actually is right now.
Right, the landscape of AI roles.
Exactly. Like when you look at roles in AI training or, data annotation or evaluating models, on platforms like Outlier or Aligner or maybe Appen,
Yeah, those are really common examples.
you start to notice a very specific pattern in how they interview. They often want to see your underlying process.
Right, but why is that? If I give a technically correct answer, why isn't that just, a home run?
Well, it comes down to something the industry often calls the judgment layer.
The judgment layer. Okay, tell me more about that.
So you have to remember that in the real world of AI training, the data is, it's almost always messy.
Right.
The problems are frequently underspecified, so if a candidate just recites a memorized textbook answer, that might show they have a great memory for facts.
Yeah, but it doesn't show much else.
Exactly. It completely fails to show how they will handle an unexpected edge case or like a weird ambiguous set of data that just doesn't fit the standard mold.
Okay, so give me an example of that. What does a messy, underspecified problem actually look like in the context of one of these jobs?
Sure. So imagine a user prompts an AI to write a Python script to scrape a specific website.
Okay, simple enough.
Right. And the AI generates the code perfectly. It is totally bug-free. A candidate who's only looking at technical accuracy would say, great, the code works. This is a perfect response.
Right, because it did exactly what the user asked.
But the judgment layer requires more. Like, what if that specific website has strict safety policies against scraping?
Oh, I see.
Or what if the AI just generated a tool for a cyber attack? The technical answer is right, but the human judgment is completely missing.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Interviewers often want to see how you navigate that exact kind of ambiguity.
Exactly. They want to know if you can break down a complex issue, evaluate your options, and, prioritize the right next steps.
It is kind of like showing your work in a high school math class.
Oh, that is a great analogy.
Like you could write down the correct final number at the bottom of the page, but the teacher always told you to show the steps.
Right, because they need to see how you got there.
Because if the final answer is right, but the formula you used to get there is a total mystery, the teacher doesn't actually know if you understand the core capability.
You could have just guessed.
Or you could have copied it.
That is the perfect way to look at it. Ultimately, these AI roles, whether you're looking at platforms like Micro One or Mercor or any of the others we mentioned, they're decision-making jobs.
Not memorization jobs.
Right. When an interviewer asks you a question, they may simply be testing whether you are actually in control of the problem.
Because if the AI model spits out a massive block of code, you're the one in charge.
Yes, exactly. If it gives a highly technical, jargon-heavy response, you are the human in the loop. You have to make the judgment call on whether it's safe, accurate, and helpful.
So your ability to articulate your thinking out loud is the proof that you actually own the decision.
You hit the nail on the head.
Okay, that clarifies the landscape for me. But knowing you need to explain your thinking is one thing.
Yeah, doing it is another.
Structuring an answer so that it sounds organized without sounding like a robot reading a script is a whole different challenge.
It really is.
So how do we actually build that natural framework?
Well, the first step is knowing what not to do.
Okay, I'm listening.
One of the biggest pitfalls candidates run into is trying to rely on a fully memorized, pre-written script.
Oh yeah, you can always tell when someone is reading.
Candidates often report that reading from a full written document during a live interview just sounds incredibly unnatural.
The interviewer can usually hear your eyes tracking across the screen.
Exactly. It flattens your tone. And worse, it completely removes your ability to be flexible and collaborative if they ask a follow-up question.
So what is a better approach?
A much more common approach is to speak from short notes or just a few bullet points.
I am a big fan of bullet points. So how do we structure those notes? I know you've got a framework for this. Break it down for me.
Sure. It is a 5-step framework, and it is highly flexible.
Okay.
Step 1 is the most important. Answer the question directly first.
Right. Do not build up to it with a 3-minute preamble.
Exactly.
Right.
Don't make the interviewer guess where you are going.
Okay, let me jot this down so I have it straight. Step 1, answer directly. What is step 2?
Step 2 is to explain what you are checking or looking for. You are essentially naming the variable you care about.
Okay.
And then step 3 is to explain why that specific thing matters to the overall goal.
Okay, so answer directly what I'm checking and why it matters. Got it.
Then step 4 is to give a very short, simple example to illustrate your point.
Just to ground your abstract reasoning in reality.
Exactly. And finally, step 5 is to mention the result, your decision, or the exact next step you would take based on your findings.
Okay, looking at these 5 steps, answer directly what I'm checking, why it matters, an example, and the final decision.
That is the whole structure.
I like the structure, but I have to push back on something you just said.
Okay, sure.
You mentioned keeping the example simple. If I'm applying for a highly technical AI training role, doesn't keeping my answer simple make me sound a bit, well, less like an expert?
I hear that concern all the time.
Shouldn't I be throwing in the technical jargon I know to prove my capability?
Actually, the reality of these interviews is quite the opposite. True expertise is the ability to distill incredibly complex ideas into simple, actionable steps.
Oh, that is interesting.
Yeah, if you overcomplicate an answer or try to pack it with dense jargon just to sound smart, it usually signals a lack of clear understanding.
You end up hiding behind big words.
Exactly. You want to avoid vague, rambling answers by keeping your response laser-focused. Use simple words.
So clarity is the ultimate flex.
Clarity is everything. And to maintain that clarity, a great trick is to use specific framing phrases to guide your listener.
What do you mean by framing phrases?
Instead of just launching into a thought, you might say, I would start by checking, or the reason I would look at that first is.
Ah, I see. Those phrases act as verbal signposts.
Right. They lower the cognitive load for the interviewer and show that you have a highly structured mind.
I really like that. I would start by checking. It immediately tells the person on the other side of the screen that you have a method.
Exactly. You aren't just winging it.
So let's take this 5-step framework and those signpost phrases and see how they hold up against different types of questions.
Sure, let's do it.
Fact-checking makes sense because there is an objective truth to look up. Pointing out that fact-checking is a huge part of the job is easy enough.
It really is a huge part of it.
But I imagine a lot of these AI prompts are creative or open-ended.
Oh, absolutely.
How do you apply this rigid framework when a question asks you to evaluate 2 AI responses that are completely subjective and neither one is technically wrong?
That is a fantastic distinction, and it is where a lot of candidates get tripped up.
Because it feels like a trick question.
Right. When you are comparing 2 subjective responses, you have to remember that your personal opinion doesn't actually matter.
Ouch, good to know.
It is true, though. Instead, you rely on the specific constraints of the prompt or the persona the AI was asked to adopt.
Okay, so how would I say that in an interview?
A practical phrase to use here is, I would compare the 2 answers based on, and then you list the constraints the user asked for.
So did the user ask for a specific word count?
Exactly. Did they ask for a highly professional tone? You anchor your judgment to the requirements of the task, not your gut feeling.
That makes total sense. It actually reminds me of what it is like to train a new employee on a company's brand voice.
Oh, how so?
Imagine you hire a brilliant writer, but they just came from a highly academic corporate job, and your company sells skateboards.
Right. Totally different vibe.
Their grammar is absolutely flawless. Factually, everything they write is correct. But the vibe is completely wrong for a skateboard company.
Yeah, it would sound ridiculous.
If you are evaluating their work, you aren't grading them on whether the sentences are technically perfect.
Right. You are grading them on whether they hit the constraints of the brand.
Exactly.
That is a much better way to think about it. The AI might produce grammatically perfect text, but if it doesn't fit the tone or the constraints the user asked for, it fails the judgment layer.
And your job in the interview is to explain exactly how you measure that fit. What about when they ask you to explain a complex topic to someone who isn't an expert? Like if the AI prompt is from a beginner?
That is a great question. When you need to explain a technical topic simply, the best approach is to use a brief, relatable analogy.
Okay, give me an example of a good analogy.
Sure. Let's say you need to explain machine learning to a total beginner. Instead of talking about neural networks and backpropagation, you could use a fruit analogy.
A fruit analogy?
Yeah, you can say, it is like teaching a robot to recognize fruit by showing it thousands of pictures of apples and bananas instead of writing a strict rule that says an apple is always red and round.
Oh, I love that. It makes the concept instantly clear without dumbing it down.
Exactly. And interviewers love to see that you can bridge that gap between technical data and human understanding.
Speaking of human understanding, what if an AI-generated answer is technically correct, but just feels slightly off topic?
Well, that is exactly where your reasoning shines. You articulate why it misses the mark based on the user's intent.
So what phrase would you use there?
You would say something like, my decision would depend on what the user is actually trying to accomplish.
Okay, I think it is time to bring all of this out of the abstract and into reality.
I agree.
I want to do a mini role play. And if you are listening to this right now, maybe you are on a walk or commuting, I want you to take a moment and actively think about how you would answer this first question before we get into it.
Good idea.
I will act as the interviewer, and I'm going to ask 3 realistic sample-style questions.
Sounds good.
I want you to answer them clearly and naturally, just like a real person thinking out loud, not like a polished AI script.
I am ready. Let's do it.
Okay, question 1. How would you check if an AI answer is accurate?
Well, I would start by checking the core factual claims the AI is making against a trusted external source.
Okay.
The reason I would look at that first is that even highly articulate AI models don't actually retrieve facts. They predict text, which means they can confidently hallucinate data. So, for example, if the AI cites a specific legal case or a medical statistic, I wouldn't rely on my own memory or assume it is right. I would cross-reference those specific claims.
And then?
If my research contradicts the AI, my next step would be to flag the output as factually inaccurate and correct the data.
Okay, stepping out of the role play for a second, that is a really strong answer.
Thanks.
What makes it work is that you didn't just say, I'd look it up on Google. You used the signpost phrase, I would start by checking.
Right, it organizes the thought.
That organized the thought immediately. Then you hit the why, explaining the mechanism of text prediction versus fact retrieval. That proves you understand the technology.
And I didn't overcomplicate it.
Exactly. And ending with the clear action, flagging the output, gives the interviewer a complete resolution. Very clean.
Glad it worked?
All right, let's try. Question 2. If 2 AI responses are both partly correct, how would you decide which one is better?
My decision would depend heavily on the specific constraints of the user's original prompt.
Okay, how so?
Since both answers are factually okay, I would compare the 2 answers based on how well they follow the underlying instructions.
Give me an example.
For example, I would look to see if one response captured a requested tone better, or if one adhered strictly to a negative constraint, like a user asking not to include introductory filler text.
Got it.
The one that better respects the user's specific boundaries is the one I would choose as the better response.
Again, really solid. You avoided the trap of saying, I would just pick the one that sounds better to me.
Yeah, that personal opinion trap.
Highlighting that phrase, my decision would depend on, sets up a logical condition.
Right.
And as we talked about earlier, relying on constraints instead of personal opinion shows great judgment.
It takes the guesswork out of it.
Okay, last one. This is the tricky one. Question 3. What would you do if you are not sure whether the answer is correct?
If I am not sure, I would first clarify the information before making any final judgment.
Why is that your first step?
The reason this is critical is that guessing can introduce bad data directly into the model's training pipeline. So I would talk through the exact process I'd use to figure it out.
Okay, what does that process look like?
For example, I might need to look up internal guidelines, or I might need to verify a highly specialized term with a domain expert.
So you wouldn't just guess?
No, I would outline the exact steps I'd take to find that missing context rather than just making an assumption and moving on.
Now, I have to challenge this a bit.
Sure.
Admitting you don't know something in a highly competitive technical interview feels incredibly risky.
I get that.
Are we sure interviewers won't just write a candidate off as underqualified if they admit they need to clarify things?
It is a natural fear, but handling the unknown is actually a critical skill they are screening for.
Really?
Yeah. It is incredibly common to feel stuck or hit a wall during a technical or skill-based interview.
It happens to everyone.
When that happens, the absolute worst thing you can do is make up a fake technical answer to try and save face.
Because if they catch you faking it?
Your credibility goes to zero. Exactly.
I imagine so.
Interviewers can spot that instantly. And the second worst thing you can do is just freeze and go completely silent.
Right, because if you are silent, the interviewer has no idea what is happening in your head.
It is just a black box to them.
You could be thinking of a brilliant solution, or you could be totally panicking, and they can't tell the difference.
That is why, if you don't know the answer, the safest and most impressive thing to do is talk through the process you would use to figure it out.
That makes a lot of sense.
Avoid rushing into problem-solving mode if you know you are missing pieces of the puzzle. Take a breath and ask clarifying questions.
Like what kind of questions?
You might ask about edge cases or inquire about specific input requirements the prompt might have missed.
So it's about being collaborative.
Yes. Thinking out loud when you are stuck actually invites collaboration with the interviewer. It shows that you are resilient and methodical.
I think that completely reframes the situation. Asking clarifying questions isn't a sign of weakness.
Not at all.
It is a sign of confidence. It shows you want to make sure you are solving the right problem before you commit time to it.
Exactly. Let's look at the engineering reality here. In the real world, engineers, evaluators, and data scientists ask questions constantly.
Right. Nobody builds complex AI systems in a vacuum.
If a model is trained on bad data because an evaluator was too proud to ask a question, the whole system suffers.
The classic garbage in, garbage out problem.
Exactly. Showing that you know how to ask for missing information is a highly valued skill.
It proves you understand the boundaries of your own knowledge.
And more importantly, that you have a safe, reliable system for expanding it.
Ultimately, candidates don't need perfect answers. They just need to be clear, organized, and able to explain their thinking step by step. If you want more practice questions and simple sample answers for AI training interviews, you can check the workbook linked in the description.